Hey, welcome to our book club for the Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England. I'm really happy you're here. If you would like to join the discussion, follow the link in the description to r/Sanderson, where we will be having discussions about this. Let us know there what you like about this format, what you think we could do better, what you would be looking forward to from future book clubs from us. And for now, just enjoy the discussion.
Welcome back to Brandon's Book Club. I'm your host, Matt Hatch, and we're here for part 2 of the Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England. Did it again. And luckily, I am joined again with my fellow wizards, Wren, Joshua, Katie, and Steve. Thank you guys all for returning to have this continued conversation.
I'm glad to be here.
About the book. Why don't we just jump into where we were at? But I guess quick note for anyone watching, just remember, no Cosmere spoilers. That's awesome. And just remember, we're going to be spoiling things even further on in the book, even though we're kind of generally covering chapters 13 through 25, about the mid-side part of the plot itself. But we're going to really be diving into a lot of the tech and magic today. So, and art, yeah, absolutely. You brought up an interesting question, Steve, that I wanted to revisit, which was, that John kind of wondered what was his usefulness in medieval England. And I had that same question as I was reading. Did all of you wonder to yourself, like, he found a usefulness in medieval England? Katie, you already said, I don't know that I would ever want to do something like this. Do you have an idea of like, no, this skill I know I have that actually would be really useful if I was ever sent back to medieval England?
It depends on how much sort of like prep time I have before going back in time, you know? It's like, if I just instantly get jumped back, or I mean, to another dimension, I should say, it's not technically time travel.
Right. Yeah.
I would probably not be in a good position. I would be like, okay, I don't know how to survive here. I don't know how to hunt for food or whatnot. I know how to like make that little like bowstring with the stick so you can like start a fire. That would be kind of cool, but I'm sure everyone else is like, cool, we all know how to make fires. Good for you. Yeah. It's like, great. I don't know. I don't know. One of my skill sets that I've always been proud of is problem solving. So I imagine there's some sort of problem that I can figure out a solution to, but that's about it.
Okay. I like it. Anybody else? I mean, Steve, I feel like
I would be lost and I would die. Yeah. That's just kind of how it works.
I would be lost.
Without my Oyster card or contact list to just get from place to place, tap in, tap out, please, no horses.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
Well, I thought it was really funny that he keeps thinking how useless he is and he can't impress them. Meanwhile, he has these things in his bloodstream that can heal him from all kinds of the bubonic plague, it's keeping his teeth brushed, it's keeping him shaved, it's he can taste things however he wants, he can change his skin temperature to whatever he wants, he doesn't need to sleep. And these are just very futuristic advances, and yet he can't think of anything to impress them except drawing.
He does what he does.
That's why I need to go back to medieval England. Is like, it's impressive.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Did you know that you would be considered a god if you had gone back there? Yeah. You definitely would.
I consider him a god in the here and now when I look through this book.
Well, let's talk about that. The art itself. We have Steve with us. Steve, Brandon. This is, I think, in the beginning of the book. Before you read it, Brandon wrote, the first is when he's talking about people he had to thank. He said, the first is the amazing Steve Argyle, a great friend and brilliant artist. I basically handed this book to Steve and said, this is yours to play with. Do whatever you would like to make it awesome. And man, even with my high expectations, his art blew me away. If you're listening to the audiobook, I suggest you stop on my website and see the art Steve did because it's incredible. I concur. I'm looking off to my left and seeing some amazing drawings. What was this like to just be given this book and said, make it awesome?
It was amazing because, you know, most of the time when we work commissions, we know what we want. We have all the parameters. it's not like you're on rails, but they know what they want and you're there to fulfill their vision. That's the job. With this book, Brandon, he basically was like, so I wrote a book. It's fun. We really weren't thinking of doing anything with it until we came up with this Kickstarter idea. So do you want to just run with it? Just do whatever. And I was like, yes, that sounds like super amazing.
Wow.
It's like an artist's dream.
Katie's over there like, that's what
Whatever.
Well, and so we started talking about it. And at first we started talking in normal terms. You know, Isaac was there and he's like, so, you know, standard things we want to cover, and we'll probably want around 4 color illustrations. That seems kind of standard.
Yeah.
And Brandon was like, but it doesn't have to be that. You know, you can do more, you can do less. You don't have to think in the standard terms. And so for me, it's just stuff starts lighting up. Here, all the things I've wanted to do that no one will let me.
Yeah.
And I fully expected Brandon to shoot down most of my ideas, right? So I read through it and I was like, so the most intriguing part for me, as far as what could be visual, was the Frugal Wizard Handbook, the in-world book. And so we had a bunch of ideas. I talked to him about it. And if you look at the art, none of it actually, well, the color illustrations are from the story, but all the black and white stuff doesn't really have anything to do with it. I mean, there's Joan of Arc with someone next to her driving a mech, right? That's not in the book. No, spoiler alert. No mechs, no Joan
But
of
it's
Arc's
in
not
some
it.
dimension.
Yeah. And so the first discussion was that, like, it would be fun to have these kind of larger than life advertisements. You know, for those fantastic packages, you have a giant skull castle because you're ruling with an iron fist or whatever wizards have, or an iron staff. And so then we were like, well, what about the frequently asked questions? Those are sillier. We should do something. And I came up with a little mascot, right?
Yeah.
A little wizard.
What's his name?
Mervin.
Mervin, everyone.
Mervin.
Okay.
I love Mervin.
He's
I
so
think he's
cute.
wonderful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Love his little folded hat. It's too big, so it just
Nothing quite fits him.
yeah.
All his clothes are just... He's cute and he's little. And I don't even know if it's a he. You know,
It's a Mervin.
How many iterations did you go through before you finally came up with the final sort of design for Mervin?
we actually have sketches.
Okay.
We can answer that question. I thought people might be interested in that, so I do have. These are okay. This is just a handful, and where it ended up. But my process, you would think most people imagine that I have this fantastic imagination and I can just picture it and it's there. That's garbage. It's not even close. I have to build things from scratch and I have to do it over and over and over and over again. When I send sketches to most of the people I work with, they get like 30 to 40 because I'm just trying to work out what things are, what they look like, how they're built. And so with Mervin, I probably did like 200 little wizard doodles. Wow. And then you can see where he ended up. He's down there at the bottom, but just a wide variety, and each one kind of has its own personality. But when I got to that one, when I drew him, I was just like, no, that's it. Normally I'll go back and forth and I'll wishy-washy, but like as soon as I had finished that one, it's just like, no, that's him.
So you were trying to make the beard work, and you have,
I was for a while there.
but you eventually landed on a wizard that doesn't have a beard at all. So
But he gets a Santa beard.
He does. So, it's funny you say that because that's what Brandon said. He's like, so he doesn't have a beard. Wizards, I mean, it's fine, but wizards, you know what? Can we address that somehow? Like, he doesn't have a beard. And so that was the first little bit of the margin doodle idea.
Oh,
because there was no place in the frequently asked questions.
So that's something I was curious about because as a longtime Mad Magazine reader, I was wondering, like, you know, where the idea come from. Yeah, because of the marginal drawings that Sergio did in Mad Magazine. And there's even a little taste, especially in the line drawing, you know, occasionally like Gru-like or something, and it's, but...
Yeah, I grew up on that, and he was immediately who I thought of, and I got a book just of all of his stuff.
I loved those.
Yeah.
Is it the comic, was that something you collaborated with Brandon on, or he just was like, maybe figure out some way to give it a beard, and you were like, okay, and he told a story. Is there, like, how did that, putting it there and putting that whole idea come together?
There were collaborations kind of in pieces. So it started with just like, he doesn't have a beard, and he doesn't need to have a beard, but he should like need to have a beard, even though he doesn't. Like, wizards need beards, so let's have a thing where he needs a beard for something. Because at first the doodles were just going to be like maybe 5 or 6, you know, scattered throughout the book, just little Easter eggs. And so I made this little story that is in there where he wants to go through the portal, and they tell him he can't go through without a beard. Wizards need beards. No beards are required. And then the beard almost has its own adventure.
Can we talk about the beard's adventure? Can we talk about that?
Yes.
Okay.
So we don't have pictures of that specifically, but that was, as it was starting to form into a little bit of its own story, I ran that past Brandon. I'm like, so I have an idea for essentially a Conan character. He's like, oh yeah, no, that's great. Great, you know, swords and sorcery. I'm like, wait, no, not done. Can he be naked? Brandon's like, I mean, it's a book for how naked? Like,
Go on.
just butt, you know, it's okay to have man butt normally, right? And he's like, maybe I want to see what you're talking about, but it's not off the table. So I kind of showed him the progression, and he thought it was hilarious. So we went with it. So this project was full of stuff I was sure was going to be shot down. Like, so many things where I'm like, you know what'd be fun is this. Just fully expecting yeah, I'm sure that would be fun. We're not doing that. But Brandon just was encouraging with everything. I'm like, this would be cool. And he's like, do it. And I'm like, here it is. He's like, more of that, but you don't have to. Several times he's like, you've done enough. You know, you gave us 5 color illustrations. We asked for 4. You gave us a bunch of black and white things. I mean, you can stop anytime you want to. You've earned your money and then some. What finally limited it was Isaac saying, we need to send it to the printer like tomorrow. So you need anything that's left, it's gotta go. And there is a bunch of stuff that didn't make it in that I would have loved to do. We were talking in the last episode about the rating system. And I thought that was a lot of fun. So one of the proposals that I have, I didn't bring them, but I have some sketches for, is I wanted to have testimonials in the Frugal Wizard, the in-world book, where it's like candid photos of wizards having fun. So they're having beer with Chaucer. They are,
oh wow, yeah,
you know, these kind of fun historic things, and they're all being tourists in them. And then they have their review, and they have the stars, and there were a lot of fun ideas kicked around that I'm sad we didn't quite get to fit those in as well. But there's already a lot of art.
So there's like 4 different categories of art in this book. There's the major color illustrations you have, which are just like moments from the story. Then there's all of the handbook stuff, the art that's supposed to be accompanying the handbook. And then there's all these sketches, like the opening cover here. Is this supposed to be like in-world art? Like this is John's hand?
Yes. So these are, throughout the book, John is sketching all the time. He sketches Cephawin, he sketches Elston, and I thought it would be really fun to just have his sketches. So that's what these are.
Well, I want to, I'm going to rate John wrong, because he was like, I'm not a very good artist. So John was wrong.
Well, I mean, and I read the book for the first time on my iPad, and like, I'm noticing the marginal, but it doesn't really like just pop on that reading experience, and then cracking open the plastic on the Dragonsteel edition and just getting to actually see on paper just, you know, all of the marginal drawings coming through. It's like, it's your art, and it's just a beautiful package, and it just, you know, there's only one way to kind of enjoy it, and
I mean, you're totally right. My biggest disappointment about this book is that I didn't read the physical copy of this, because I do believe that the art adds so much to the experience. And, you know, obviously every Dragonsteel book that's come out has always had like some amazing art accompanying it, but usually it's just like, all right, here's an interlude, here's a couple pages of some cool artwork stuff in world, and it's like, sick, all right, moving on. But here, it's like in time with the book, and it feels right. And so obviously a lot of this artwork's on the website. You can go check it out, especially if you're an audiobook listener. But I mean, the reason why I listen is because I'm a massive fan of Michael and Kate, and I think they're the best narrators out there. And so it's like, oh yes, another book that I can listen from them. But I don't know, maybe I should have read it first and then listened to it on my reread.
Can I ask, and this is a stupid question, who is this right there?
So in the back.
In the very back. Is that Woden? Is that
yes. That's
oh, with the crooked eyes, yeah.
Okay. I don't think I realized that.
Because it's the resolution, right?
Yeah, so the front is all of his sketches during the story, and then in the back we have his kind of epilogue. Visual epilogue. So this is all stuff that's kind of in the happily ever after, you know.
They're learning to draw.
I mean, we're jumping ahead to talking about the end, but I guess we're talking about art. So we have Elston, and he's learning to draw, learning to paint.
Gotcha, yeah.
And Cephalin is teaching people to read and write, which was, you know, no bueno, according to Woden. Mm-hmm. We have Woden's puppet.
Okay. Oh yeah. Sorry. Now I'm there. Right.
Down here, this is Yazed in his orchard, and he has built a wind-powered car. It's a boat with wheels on it.
Oh, so he can sail?
So he can sail.
Oh, and
okay,
not
gotcha.
get killed and captured.
Yeah. And then we have Logna has her own runestone.
Ah, okay.
And then we have a happy Cephalin, because we had a sad one, and she's happy now. So
it's like this dimension's version of a James Bond Aston Martin. Kind of depicted.
Well, he's such like a creative character, and he's so adventurous, Yazed. So I was like, he would totally be like, I'm taking this and I'm running with it.
It's really cool.
So. Which is your favorite piece? I mean, is
that
kind of like an author when they're like, oh, I love all my characters kind of thing, or do you have a favorite piece?
Oh, that's hard. Because there's a lot in here.
Well, the little ones are so detailed.
Yeah.
And I can't, some of them, they look small, but I feel like they took a really long time. They have so many polished details, really strong anatomy and everything. So,
thank you.
Yeah, can you pick a favorite?
Okay, so one that I really like is the last woodcut style piece. Which I think we have...
Audience, follow along and open your book page.
I love the dragon who's sad that he killed him.
Well, and I just love the one on, like, after page 16, because I just think it gets across the idea of the character, like the handbook idea that he is very forlorn, and the strewn pages of it just sets the tone for his mental state at that moment.
I just love this dragon giving him CPR. I just have to.
This is my favorite. We could just sit here like it's like a show and tell. Like I love these kind of the chapter, the headers, the runestones.
And people deciphered, like people in the audience, have you deciphered what all of those are?
Ooh, good question.
Each one is relevant to the chapter.
If I had more time, I know I would.
I looked at them really closely, and I know that they correlate to the story. But do the shapes correlate to the story? Like the rock shapes? Oh, they do? Oh.
What don't we know that we should know, Steve?
Why do they correlate?
Some of them are more obvious than others.
Because these, I figured out that, like how this number system was created, that you had a visual language system that you were creating. Like this means person, this means, lightning. I don't know what that means, but okay, what do the shapes mean?
So some of them are obvious, like you've got one where,
You're talking about the chapter headers, right?
Yes.
These things.
So I think this is the one where too late for it to be the boats, but so like here's the Vikings. Now the boat's pretty obvious, right? But there are 3 boats, and so there are 3 stones, right? Yeah. That one's simple, but they all have some connection. Like when he's healing Eelston, there's a large strong rock and one that's kind of leaning against it and crumbling, and then the line work connects the 2. So it's him transferring his healing nanites.
Gotcha.
With the rock shape.
With the rock shapes.
Okay, I gotta see that.
There's one where it's just a tall square and an oval, and they're leaning together, and that's the happily ever after for John and Cephawin. So some of them are more obvious than others, and some of them might have just been, this is a cool shape, and I'll try and figure out how it relates later.
Mean,
This is probably going to hurt people watching right now, because I'm going to say, yes, Steve could probably tell you exactly what all these mean. All the people that are like really curious about those. But I want us to maybe dig back into the story a little bit about the art, which is, and maybe Katie, this question for you. We're here sitting fascinated by art, right? And I'm forcing myself to say, we should probably talk about other things, but we could have sat here and what is it? And the story makes this clear. They're fascinated when John draws. And they're like, whoa, what's this? What is it, do you think? I mean, you're an artist. What is it you think that is so captivating to the human experience about art?
Well, it's funny. I'm sure you can relate. It's not uncommon. It doesn't take a medieval person to get this reaction. Yeah. I'm sure, we've gotten it our whole lives. People our whole lives, wow, in school especially, wow. Yeah. And then did you always get this? All I could draw is a stick figure.
Oh, yeah.
You get that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
but why do you think that is? Like, why is it such a stop moment for everyone to stop when they see? Is it the reality? Is it just recreating something that's real to people that's so fascinating?
I think it goes back to childhood. I think one of the first skills you can show, you can't be a kid and play the piano unless you're given a piano, but everyone probably has a paper and a pencil. And so I think we all just have this natural draw to this skill that only took a paper and a pencil.
Pun intended?
Oh, yeah.
Do you have, Steve, anything to add to that? Like, do you, like you said, it's not like just comes to you and you're working it out, but you draw, like, I think of it as Wizzy, but it's Mervin. Mervin, and now we're all captivated by Mervin, right?
He has a few names in there.
Yeah, any kind of thing that, why do you think that is the case, that we're so captivated by art?
I think it's the same reason as we're captivated by writing and stuff. It's that there's something tangible, something has been created that wasn't there before, and it represents something to us. It a character means something, even though we don't, they're not real. We know they're not real, but they're still, they still connect to us. We still have an attachment to them. They still evoke emotions in us. And I think that's kind of what it is it seems a little bit wizardry to be able to do a thing and say, I'm making you feel something with words, with a song, with a picture. We have a special kind of gift. I don't like.
I think it's human nature to enjoy escapism, and as very, very visual creatures, we are drawn to visual things, and so a simple image can elicit a lot of that escapism, and especially in this book where art wasn't a thing at all. It's like a new novel experience. It's like as readers, we're on the same sort of ride with these other people, because we can live vicariously through their experience. It's like, we've all seen art, but now this is our chance to actually see someone seeing art for the first time. And so at least in this book, it's like, it was a very, it almost felt like wish fulfillment in a fun way, you know? I just think there's just a natural draw to anything that's larger than life.
Yeah.
And he's drawing them, and they're excited to see themselves.
Yeah, well, he uses it, right, in that moment with the Vikings.
Yeah.
It's his form of magic, right? But he doesn't consider it magic, right? But it's that, what is that, the line? It's like sufficiently advanced technology
will appear like
magic or something like that. To them, it was like he drew it, and what he was doing, even though they understood kind of like he was doing something, it still felt magical, like they couldn't understand it. When he ran to the Vikings, like this is the first moment, they get almost upset because they're like, give me myself back.
Yeah.
Because you recreated me in a way that is uncomfortable because it feels so real.
Why did you take my soul? I don't know how I feel about this. Give me my soul back.
Right.
He didn't sell it to them that way, where he's like, I've taken your soul. That would probably freak you out a bit.
Yeah, he did. He was playing his grift there to save them, right? Which mostly played out.
That's where his ability to bluff and lie really started coming in. So it wasn't just the art part, it was the con man part.
Well, he bluffs, but I want us to jump into this. He bluffs right into magic that he doesn't understand, right? Like he bluffs and he draws the rune stone, and then all of a sudden it lights on fire, right?
Which was the moment in the book where I'm just like, okay, something's actually up. Didn't see that coming. It's like, all right, this thing, lightning, and he's like, okay, that was not what I expected, but I'm going to roll with it. Yeah, you see that? Yeah.
What is the magic then in this world? Like, is it, I mean, maybe we can't define it. I don't know, like, what do you call it? It's like the gods that have, it's ruin magic? I don't know what it is. It's like, do we have a way of defining the magic of this world?
It's the old magic.
It's old magic?
I think that's still being debated on the 17 Shard forum.
You're like, actually, yeah.
Well, because normally in these books, there's always a clear magic system.
Yeah.
You know, there's always an architecture that makes the magic so intriguing, because it's like, all right, there's like a physics element to it all that just, it can't work unless it's following the laws that it established in the world.
Well, it's hand waving or it's physics. And this is somewhere in the middle of that. But definitely the idea that the gods are actually part of it, even in the stories that they're saying about the origins of the gods, they seem less mythological and more actually earthbound, about interaction, like kind of, they feel like real people and not mythical creature, you know, having like the mythical, and that's different about the book.
I mean, because we know there's like wights of some sort, and that they can be bound and they can unbind things, right? Like the very end, we see that doesn't, like unbinds the body. Like it's like the body just kind of comes apart. If like, so we know that there's some other entity, creature type, but the magic system, like you said, is kind of a soft one, I guess.
But Brandon spent so much time structuring his magic systems for his Cosmere books that's part of why this book was refreshing, because it had like a little bit of, well, I wonder if Brandon would debate that. No, it's not, but it felt a tiny dash of Harry Potter magic, where I didn't have to fully fully make sense.
Well, so maybe that's a question for Brandon.
Yeah. Is it Harry Potter magic a little bit or no?
So, Katie, I wouldn't consider this a Harry Potter style soft magic system. The trick about this is a magic system, as some of mine are, but more so than others, that depends on the volition of entities involved, right? The whites have choice in this matter. And because of that, it's going to be naturally softer. than some harder magics because you might end up with a wight that is really pliable and willing to work with you, or one that's really hostile, or things like that. And so the magic system, I wouldn't consider a soft magic system, but it is viewed softly by the people in the world, if that makes sense. They can't account for everything that might or might not happen because they don't have as much control as people generally have in some of my other settings, like in Mistborn or something like that. So it's a hard magic system that is presented softly.
Well, I also just kept feeling like I was following like this trail of breadcrumbs to some sort of ending. I kept expecting to get more of a resolution on how the magic worked, and to some degree we do. In the epilogue, we kind of get a little bit of an explanation.
A little something there.
Which I guess we'll get to next episode.
Yeah. Stick around for episode 3. We're going to really dig that epilogue.
Interdimensional something.
Like, what does that even mean? Yeah. Do you feel like maybe that was his signal that it's maybe not as soft magic as we might think? Is that Brandon's little nod to, no, there's some rules here, you just don't understand them?
I think so, yeah. It was like, all right, this is, again, White Room's story, we don't really know what's going on. He's figuring out his own life, let alone the world he's now in, and we're along with that ride. And so I was just kind of taking it at face value, like, oh, we're not supposed to know how this magic works yet. And that's part of the story, that's the point. And so I just didn't really question it that much, I guess. And just, especially when he was like tipping the little rocks over and he'd look away and he'd look back and was like, okay, there's something going on here. This is more than magic. There's a consciousness involved here. That there's more than just magic. There's a magical being that's happening here.
Yeah. Steve, were you that way? Did you just kind of let it be? Did you just kind of enjoy the ride? Were you starting to ask questions like, what's happening? How does this work? Or do you just like...
I was trying real hard to decipher all of it. And it's approached from sci-fi, but it's magic, right? And so I kept trying to kind of figure out how they work together. And the indication is that there's something about the imposition of a being from one dimension into another, and they have the upstream and downstream thing. And so, my total just theory is that some of the instability comes with them. And so if you have somebody from the downstream, then there's some magic that comes with them because they're not supposed to be there. There's inherent instability. And then that's also why we have that, like, when you come downstream, when Runian comes downstream, somebody comes upstream, there's like a real problem when they're near each other.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, they can't exist. They'll annihilate each other. Well, the higher tier will annihilate the lower tier. And I just can't help but think that that's how the magic system is working, is it's the imposition of the wrong dimension into another one that's messing everything up. Yeah. And that outside of that, maybe there wouldn't be any magic if there's no instability. But again, that's just me going like, there's gotta be something, it's Brandon.
No, I love you digging into that kind of like, I love the idea that like they're, like you said, kind of coming up from that lack of instability, a lack of substance that maybe we're in the upstream versus the downstream.
I mean, of course, it's not magic. Duh, it's quantum probability states.
Right?
But now, though, are we at risk of like ascribing too much power to Brandon? Because like I read about like the Shining and all of the symbology and this and that, and then you'll read somebody who is actually on the set of the movie and says like, no, we just grabbed that thing off the set that day. So like, which are we?
Katie, you had something to add.
I was just gonna say, John, his little mini art dropout story was it was interesting to me as an artist.
Oh yeah, itself, like just his experience itself. Did the book appeal to you in that way? Just its use of art and his experiences?
He's an art student. He's drawing. Yeah. I love reading about what I'm doing all the time. It's interesting.
Yeah. No, it was one of those, again, like, but you're like, what do you believe that he's saying? Like, is that really what he did? But then he does obviously draw. And that part, you're like, okay, it's almost this moment where I go, I can believe this about him. I'm not sure about all the other stories that he's telling himself, because Ryan comes in and kind of, and that he meets up with that friend of his who brings kind of a more of the science aspect, right? They have this whole moment in this mid-section of the books where all of a sudden he finds out that, you know, we get a lot of things happening where he meets up with Quinn, for example, Quinn and Ulrich, right? They go to, is it Wellberry? And he has a moment where he uses his nanites, right, to heal. And so all of a sudden we have the really heavy science side, the science fiction side. Did you like that more than the magic? Did any of you kind of have appeal? Brandon said he went more science fiction than fantasy in this one.
I did.
Yeah?
I wanted to see more of that, to be honest. Like, that was what I wanted to see a lot more of, was the dichotomy between the super advanced technology in a fundamentally, like, underdeveloped world. You know, it's like, what are all the different ways that this could impact? And so that was one of my favorite moments. Like, oh, he saved this dude's life by transferring his nanites to him and being able to do that. And I was like, that was really cool. And I like that. I like that aspect of it.
Yeah, it said a lot about him, right? Because giving away his nanites, that was his...
Well, there was that little subnote. I was like, oh, his nanites are going to regrow.
With time, though, there's certainly an immediate short-term risk in that sequence.
What was your favorite, Josh, or your favorite augment that came up in the story?
My favorite augment? Well, I don't have any personally. I thought that
you're wearing glasses. These are long.
A good point. I thought I liked the use of color. Like, I just thought that was pretty nifty when he's able to, like, turn things the different colors to kind of emphasize some of the other things that he's doing in the book. Let me show these people that I'm who I am by, like, making my arms red. Right. Like, that kind of thing. I thought, if I could do that, if I could just so I am the boss and I am going to...
I like that.
I love the idea of just not needing sleep at all. Because I would get so many more things done. I would have so many activities that I could do if I just didn't have to sleep.
Yeah, the nanites, I think I would forget. Katie, you brought this up earlier where he's like, I don't know how I can help these people. And these nanites are the thing that's doing all these things, even from a temperature standpoint. I guess one of my favorite was that he could, like, see really far and take, like, then he could, like, take the snapshot of the picture and then he could see it to draw off of it. I thought that was a fun use of the tech.
A little take a memory.
Yeah. Do you feel like this is our future, the place he came from?
Oh gosh, I hope so.
Is that where we're going?
Yeah.
The nanite future is, or are we one of the bands? Have they come downstream to our world? Are we just kind of a place wizards are visiting right now?
One other point about the nanites that I'd make is, Brandon, like, trusts the readers a lot in this, because the introduction of the nanites, it's like very casually just stuck in one paragraph. I have these things, I have those things, and you don't, like, get a lot of reference back. Now I am using this power. You're supposed to have picked up on it and know that it's there, and just, trusting that the reader's gonna be there with you for all of that.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's any worry about, like, suspension of disbelief around that. Like, he's doing this, and is it gonna break the viewer's attention in a way? Like you're talking about trusting the reader. I don't know. I just wonder.
I don't.
Yeah. What do you think, Brandon?
I wasn't terribly worried about suspension of disbelief with the science fiction tech, right? I don't write hard science fiction. I write a very soft science fiction, which is interesting. I write hard fantasy, but soft science fiction. And I think softer science fiction and harder fantasy kind of meet in the center. I wasn't terribly worried about that. I tried to use things that felt very familiar to readers, or that would feel very familiar, because the things I was doing with the alternate dimension stuff was really bizarre. And so because of that, I think people are generally familiar with the idea of nanites, generally familiar with just, hey, this stuff makes you stronger. I wasn't terribly worried about all of that. If people swallowed the pill of, hey, we're going back in time, but we're not actually going back in time. Like, that's the important one. That's the difficult one. And if people are willing to go with that and be like, all right, he's back in time, but he can't actually change the future. Got it. That's the premise. That's what we're working with. And the rest is just kind of ways to give some internal logic so that you can follow what's happening.
Did any of you, was it just kind of something, is it because we've all seen so many science fiction movies, it was just like, oh yeah, nanites, I totally get this. More so than we understood the magic, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, the nanites and some of his augments seemed kind of straightforward. There was the curiosity of, well, what else does he have? There's stuff locked that he doesn't remember that he has. But most of it was, pretty straightforward. I liked the red arms thing too, but it was more for the comedic effect of he kept being like, look, I'm a god. And it's just like, you can turn your arm. What? No. Story, bro. What does that have to do with anything?
I mean, if I look deep at the history, though, of like science fiction, I started reading about nanites like 40 years ago in analog, and I think that's something which is happening more slowly than science fiction anticipated, while there are other aspects of technology, what we can do with our phones, kind of, that have progressed way more rapidly than anybody anticipated.
Yeah.
So.
Sure.
It's very hard to sort of guess where we are on an exponential curve. Our brains are just not prepped at all for understanding exponentials. And that's literally what a technological advancement is it's an exponential curve.
Yeah.
Well, I can, if I remember correctly, it was the magic system, if you will, when he had that moment with the ship. I felt like Cephawin and his relationship completely changed at that point. Like, it actually started growing into something in this midsection of the book.
The flirting.
The flirting, yeah.
When they talk about. Yeah.
Katie, did you think the relationship was did it feel like it was naturally coming together for you?
It was, I did. It was sweet. Well, because, the main point of the whole story for me is John's struggle with his self-esteem.
Yeah.
And so when I look at how Cephawin and Earlston were talking to him, that's where a lot of my attention was at when I was reading. And I found it really sweet and endearing that they were having a healthy relationship when contrasted to these friends of his. And
I love that the thing you just brought up. The people he kept on calling his friends, the people that he looked up to, like turned out to be like really crappy people.
Cruel.
Yeah, Ryan was just like, you eventually meet him. They make it through Wellberry. That section of the story happens. He heals. Eelston gets healed, and then they're on their way to Millport, and they're on their way still. I think to go find Worm still. And then they ran into the bandits. And then you have him wake up the next day and meet Ryan. And I just thought there was like I had a really hard time with that moment. Like, Ryan's kind of tirade against him about like how terrible person he was.
He literally calls the Carpdian thing stupid. He says, Johnny, that's stupid. Why do you think that's funny? And then Johnny thinks, maybe it is stupid. And then Cephawin kind of pops in and she says, are you sure that he's your friend? And then he literally says, better than I ever deserved. Like, this guy's self-esteem is terrible.
Yeah, and Ryan's still like, it's like, oh, sorry about that. But he's still not sorry, right? It's that sorry, not sorry kind of thing. But I do like that there's this moment where, before the whole kind of final conflict happens, where he's like, I think I'm going to stay. And there was a weird kind of, it starts off kind of this, who's this guy? He doesn't know who he is. And I started not caring that I didn't know who he was, because what I knew about him in the moment, he has nanites, cool, that's awesome. There's some magic thing, but just as a person, I was like, oh.
I like this guy.
I like this guy, yeah. Somehow I don't know anything about him, and something crazy could come up that I just don't know, but I like him better than Ryan.
Because it's like...
Well, but Ryan's arrival in the book is definitely kind of an inflection point, and we'll probably be talking about that more when we get to the, final third of the book in the next episode. But the book with Ryan in it is a very different book than the book before he arrived.
True.
We learned, you know, just how much more we learn about, you know, the main character, etc. The just kind of purposefulness in a lot of ways. A lot of things just switch in that moment.
Yeah, and I was looking at the words that pop up, and all of a sudden, when Ryan's in the picture and Quinn, you see the word coward over and over and over and over and over and over, and you see just point. Yeah, he's calling himself a coward. People are calling him a coward, and then you also just see Johnny, like they're calling him Johnny, which is an insult.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like, you know, John's whole arc is that, you know, like you're saying, it's this whole having to deal with his self-worth and all of that. But he likes himself at the beginning of the book.
Yeah.
You know, and the more he remembers about himself, the more he remembers that he doesn't like himself.
Mm-hmm.
And that becomes very apparent just through the word use and the tone as the story goes on. And we start feeling that too. We start developing our own sort of like sense of pity for him. And it's like, oh man, buddy, come on, you're great. Because we've already seen his true self. His true self is the first third of the book, where he's like fun, easygoing. He's, you know, trying to help. He's trying to be good. And because he doesn't have the baggage of all of his past failures. He doesn't remember any of those past failures.
You see the foreshadowing, like when he's talking to the Viking, and he just offhand calls him a weak man, and then he starts to tremble, and he doesn't know why yet.
Yeah. That's a tough thing as a reader, because you're like, and maybe it's this idea of pity, because you said that, and I guess I give Ryan a hard time, but as a reader, I was like, I did kind of pity, you know, because Ryan kind of has that, like, I've pitied him enough, like he's, you know, I'm kind of tired of his weaknesses or whatever. And I did kind of, as a reader, pity him throughout, and that moment of not knowing why you're shaking, that was a moment I was like, oh, that's terrifying. So I think it was just Seraphin and Ailston's view of him that made the most impact to me, right? It was just how they viewed him. I was like, yeah, they're seeing something again that maybe I'm kind of still blind. I'm blinded by kind of the world that Ryan and he came from, you know, and it's in their eyes that I really, you know, regardless, I didn't care about his magic or, I mean, the magic system's cool. The science fiction kind of interdimensional wizard, that's awesome. But it was their view of him that's when I really kind of like, man, I really enjoy this story. I enjoy the story of this character. For you, Steve, was this middle section of the book, was it transformational for you as far as your view of him, Seraphin, and the overall kind of arc of the story?
Yeah, so with the arrival of Ryan, what we started to see, at least what I got out of it, was the amnesia was a gift, right? Because he didn't know who he was and he could explore that, and he had people to reflect who he was being in the moment. In the life he left, he was always basically directed and bullied into what he was supposed to be. You know, Ryan kept, like, he was just needling him the whole time with very manipulative kindness, you know, where, oh, I'm your friend and all this, and you're never good at this, so I'll take care of it.
Yeah,
just
passive aggressive. Yeah,
really manipulating him with friendship. And you get that this was true when he was in the academy, when he was a cop for a short time. It was true in his art school days where they told him he couldn't do it, and so he quit. He believed them. And then when he was Ulrich's thug, it was the same thing. He was always told who he was, and he didn't have the strength to reject that and be who he really is. And so, as much as I didn't like Ryan, right? He comes in and it's just like, this guy, he pushes all my buttons. That's like the whole thing, is Ryan's the window into why this place is so important to him and why the people he has met are so important to him. He had to forget all of this stuff to ever see himself. And so it was really interesting and transformational when he could step outside and see his two selves and make a choice, right? Yeah. He remembered enough of who he was, and he decided to stay, like you said.
Yeah, I think that was that moment. Honestly, it was that moment I was like, okay, Brandon, you decided to stay, you're going to go and give me the kind of Brandon ending to this book that I want, which we'll cover in part 3. That won't disappoint. One last question to wrap up part 2. Kind of favorite moments in this what was your favorite, just one-off moments? Do you have one that comes to mind?
Have one.
You have one? Go for it.
Chewing on some wood. Just the burnt wood, just like, I need carbon. And then he looks up and there's a person there just going.
Yeah. That is a really good one.
I enjoyed that.
Yeah. Anyone else kind of has a moment? Yeah. Okay.
I forget his name. The guy that tried to get Woden's favor by hurting his hand.
What was his name?
No.
Wellsdig?
Wellsdig something.
Wellsdig, yeah.
I loved when he... I loved when John busts in there. I almost saw him like this with the hat, and he's got his wand, and he's got his firearms, and he just has his voice, and he's like, "Obey me," because he was doing what the manual is telling him to do. Finally, it was the manual meets the story. Yeah, because he was like, the manual told me this will do it. This will make them worship me. And the other guy's like, "Show me a trick," and he's like, it was just really funny.
Yeah, he turned him into the show me a trick thing.
Dance monkey.
Yeah.
I like the flirting that page. They say, are we flirting? Because I think that was like a pivotal point in relationship development. It was fun, and it really pivots both characters' relationships in that moment.
Yeah, kind of it took out, like, again, it was less about the nanites and the magic and just about those two people. Yeah, I agree. Steve, anything for you?
So I have a few. One is everything Thok. Right, she was great. Yeah. She's so much fun. Yeah. And this was the introduction to her, and I thought she was great. But the Wellsdig, he was interesting to me because like he's presented as he is the warlord who's excessive and all that kind of stuff, and you immediately peg him as a stereotype. Yeah. But then there's that scene afterwards where you realize just how desperate he really is to protect his people. Yeah. Like that's all a show, and it kind of brings you back into that the stakes, the threat. Yeah. And so it was just a little piece, but I was like that kind of reinforced for me what the story was about. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'll just quickly mention mine. I want to read this one out because I copied this out because I thought it was hilarious. It is with the Vikings. When he walks up and he's like, Alakazam, BIOS, discography, Philadelphia, Holodisco. Nintendo. I.e. polyester.
Yeah, the Nintendo.
That was a laugh out loud moment. That's like, I was reading it and then that, like there's some humor that hit me the most. So, well, thank you all again for being part of part 2 of our discussion. I can't wait to get to part 3. And so hopefully those of you watching will stick around for part 3 of our discussion all about the final conflict. And we'll get into what Brandon, how Brandon ended this book as compared to how he ended all of his other books, and what you think about the epilogue. Because Logna's in my head, and I want to talk about it. So, but that being said, remember you can enter to win a copy of the Frugal Wizard's Handbook for surviving Medieval England that'll be signed by all these wonderful people, including Brandon. And all you have to do to enter is to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. But this time, leave a comment with your favorite augment, right?
Or an augment you think should exist in this world.
Ooh, yes. Maybe that's a better one. The one you didn't see that you think should have existed. That's perfect. And also stick around for the very end. We'll announce the winner of part 1's giveaway. So thank you all, and we will see you for part 3. Hey everybody, thank you for tuning into part 2 of our Frugal Wizard Book Club, and huge congratulations to Tom Gothchick for winning the first signed copy of this book. Yes, it's signed by all of our book club guests and Brandon Sanderson. And for those of you still watching, you have 2 more opportunities for a chance to win a signed copy. Make sure you follow the instructions at the end of part 2 and tune in to part 3 later this week. I can't wait to hear your comments about how this book ended. Until then, we'll see you at the book club.